You're listening to the Twisted Sisters podcast with Allie, a fiery realtor queen, and Samantha, a gypsy wandering her way through life while navigating being a rock star woman with ADHD. Both are former teen moms of two who have faced challenging adversities. They're here to break stereotypes, get real with you about the messiness of life, and remind you that we're all just a little twisted.
So, moving on, I want to hear how you met Mr. Fear.
Mr. Fear. Dave.
So we're in
Or
Minnesota.
as the Hobbits would say, Dabe.
Dave. I heard Dave is the male form of Karen.
Dave.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Don't
and I'm
tell
like,
him that.
Karen.
Really?
I feel
When
like
did
Dave
you hear
is like
that?
your leather man. You
It's
finally
like-
met your leather man.
Yeah, and Dave wasn't even a leather man when I met him. But
No?
I think I made him into a leather man. I mean, I think it was there, but I wasn't seeing that.
Yeah.
I met Dave in 1994, I want to say, and I was working at LaFonda's in Egan as a bartender, and I had come from Arbery's, which isn't there anymore in Apple Valley. So Dave came up to the bar and was like, "Didn't you used to work at Arbery's?" And everybody would say that to me, and I'd be like, "Yep, what do you want?" Like, move on.
Did he say it like that too?
Yeah.
Oh.
He's like, "I remember you." I'm like, "Good. What do you want?" So I got him a drink, and then Dave proceeded to try to date me for about a year. And he was going through a divorce, and he drove me crazy. I'm like, dude.
and you were also dating.
I was dating another regular
Canary
from there.
Island.
And Franco from Spain. Yeah.
Who?
So she had her like Latin lover.
Yes,
that she,
Franco.
Franco?
So I had met
It's kind of funny, isn't it? I love it.
Franco in Mexico with Allie. I brought Allie there by myself, and he was working at the front desk. And then we ended up going on a few dates when I was in Mexico, and then we ended up dating off and on for a year, I guess. I mean, obviously long distance, but I wouldn't consider that my boyfriend.
No.
You know what I mean? And I was single, and I was kind of dating a cop at the time that came into LaFonda's who was a lot older than me. And then there was Dave, and he would never give up. And he was going through a divorce, and he was there a lot with his friend. And they would ask me 1,000 questions constantly. And finally, one day, I was talking to another friend at the bar, and I said, "I'm bringing Allie, and her best friend at the time was Emily, and I'm going to bring them to the Dakota County Fair." And of course, Dave, "Oh, I have my daughter that weekend. Can I meet you guys?" And I'm like, trying to how do I say no? And I said, "That's fine. Give me your phone number and I'll call you and tell you what time." Well, it was pouring rain that day, so I never called him. Like, bonus. We don't have to go to the fair, but I'm going to the fair. So I walked into the amusement area for the rides with Emily and Allie, and there was Dave. With Jillian Rose in her little flowered dress and her long hair, and Dave had on a sleeveless t-shirt with like long jean pants and like tube socks and something, and I was like,
and a crew cut.
and I was like, oh Lord.
Oh my God,
And if you know him, he does not have crew cut hair.
No. It's like Bart Simpson hair.
They're not short salmon shorts.
They were not, thank God. But I was like, oh, this is who I'm going to spend the day with. So, of course, I went over, and I literally, you guys, in about 45 minutes, fell in love with Dave.
Aww. Look what you put off for a year.
I know. He was the most...
But you would have missed out on that outfit.
I would have. And I watched a lot of those outfits for many years. But Dave was the most amazing father I've ever seen.
Wow.
And been around. And then the most amazing male figure to these other two little girls. Doesn't even go on like spinny rides and stuff. And the Tilt-A-Whirl was Allie's favorite ride. And he rode that thing so many times and laughed and giggled. And I'm sure was sick to his stomach. But still did it for them. And we got done with the fair. And I was going to Whiskey Junction for the evening. And he asked if he could join me with him, and Bruce was his co-partner at that time. They both worked for Northwest Airlines. And I said, sure. So we went to they met me at the Whiskey Junction, and then Bruce did all the talking. So then all of a sudden I'm thinking, are you setting me up with Bruce? Because I've been so mean to you. Now you think that I don't want to.
Now I
date
kind
you?
of like
Now
you,
I
and now
like
you're
you.
not talking to me.
So I was really confused, but then we ended up dancing and then danced the whole night, and we found out that that's what we like to do together.
Wow.
And then we went back to his place, and we went through all his photos, and I learned about his family. You know what I mean? We just did all that, and then we just started dating after that. And we kept it very secret for quite a few months, and then we kind of had our coming out party that we're dating.
To all the regulars.
To all the regulars, because you don't want a bar. A bar gets
Yeah.
in your business really fast.
Yes, they do.
And we had kids, and they needed to meet each other. And when Jill and Allie met each other, they were best friends.
We were.
They were
Nice.
11 months apart, and it was
And how old were
a
you?
blessing. She was just 5. She was just a little over 5.
Wow.
And Jill was, I think Allie was turning 6 and Jill was turning 5, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we started dating, and we were inseparable.
You were. It was like the 4 of us all the
It
time,
was
just
instant
doing
family,
all the
everything.
things. Yeah. Mhm.
Everything.
I even remember like they rented a houseboat.
Mm-hmm.
And
Not a trailer?
something-
Right.
Right. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and it was flooding. Like, what
Yes.
was that?
It was sinking?
It was
Yeah.
sinking. Yes. So one of Dave's coworkers owned a boat, and he said, "Do you want to go out on the boat for the weekend?" And I'm like, "Sure." And Dave was in the Navy, so I'm like, "This guy knows what he's doing." I've been on many boats. We're gonna be fine. So we went on there. Well, he hit a sandbar the first day. 3 boats had to come, and Dave went into the muck and the sand and trenched a trench with his feet to pull this boat. And this is like a super expensive boat. To pull that out of there, then a man kind of towed us back onto the main. Then we were riding, and a boat slammed into us and cracked the whole hull of that boat that we were on.
I didn't know any of that going on.
So the whole time I just had the girls eating Cheetos and singing songs, and we're all going to be fine. And in my head I'm thinking, oh
dying.
my God.
And that's one of my best memories.
We're never going to get off of here. So we had to dock at, I want to say we were in Lutzen maybe or something like that. And we literally we weren't going to spend the night on the boat. We were just going to have a day trip. So like I said, we had Cheetos and PB&Js, and we've eaten all that. So we went in, and I remember I needed tampons too. So it's like not only did we not have food, but I'm like struggling in life. And,
Bleeding to death.
we're at like a little teeny, convenience
Bait shop.
bait shop. So I'm trying to put together a
Do you
dinner.
have tampons?
And I did, and the guy actually went and asked a neighbor or something.
Oh, thank goodness.
Because we had to put a
That's so
generator on the
Minnesotan.
boat, and we had to stand there. Well, all of a sudden, I woke up probably to change my tampon, and I put my feet down,
Oh
and there
my
was
gosh.
this much water in the boat. So the village pump wasn't pumping out the water, and so we were sinking. So we had to get the marina guy to come out or whatever, and then he got that going for us, and we got that pumped and did everything. And then we had to leave the boat there, and somebody had to come pick us up from there because we couldn't drive it back.
And
to
this
where
was
it
his
belonged.
friend's boat?
And this was his friend's boat.
And how long were you together at this point?
A
week.
No, not very long.
No, I was going to say, because he was still living in his apartment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But we lived in his apartment for a year
Okay,
or more.
okay.
We probably 3 months, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. And so then just to finish that story, I mean, it's not that important, but when that friend came back to get the boat was almost completely
Oh
gone.
my gosh. So the boat that hit him, did they have
I
to be
think that
responsible?
they had to be responsible.
Oh,
for
that's
those things.
good.
And his friend really didn't seem that upset about it, and I would have just been losing my mind.
I would have been in Florida.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. And so we both,
Franco's not sounding too bad
no,
right now.
no, and that was all
Joking.
over by then.
Right.
But yeah, but
Wow.
that was our first. So boating's always. We ended up buying a boat too,
Uh-huh.
which we had some challenges on too. So I'm like, Dave, you in water and that
Yeah.
Navy thing? I
And
don't know.
We canoed. We went down the
Oh,
Cannon
yes.
River that one time. We almost died.
Yeah.
In the
Camping, and we went canoeing, and the rapids
Oh my
and the
gosh,
water was really
camping.
strong, and it tipped over. We hit a tree, and
yeah.
Dave saved the girls'
We
lives.
did.
We had
I
to
remember
stand there
grabbing
in the
us.
river. He had one under each arm.
Wow.
The current was so strong that people came down from the campsite to grab the girls. So
Wow.
water, Dave.
No.
And Kath,
And
I don't know.
and surprise, Navy man.
I
like-
know.
Yeah, but somebody else is doing the driving.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Navy man, they're doing airplanes.
Yeah, you know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not really.
And those boats are a little big.
Yeah.
So they're not like,
Yeah, they're like
it's
an
a little
island.
different.
Yeah.
And do you feel a sense of like home in a way because your parents were from the East Coast and he's from Pittsburgh, so it was
Andy
like
works for the airline.
Yeah.
Yep, it was.
Oh,
interesting. That's right.
There was.
Familiarity.
LaFonda's was a huge airline bar, so I always felt that comfort zone that all of those people worked for Northwest. It kind of just felt like home to me a little bit. Yeah, and Dave thought that I was from New York. When I worked at Arbery's the first time that he saw me and thought that, he was single at that time, and then he ended up getting married to a girl from Pittsburgh, and she moved back here, and that's how they had Jill and stuff. But he had seen me before he even was married and wanted to introduce himself to me, but I'm sure I was not a friendly girl then either. And then
I always think of Coyote Ugly. What's the bartender's name that was kind of like the one that everybody was like, oh, be careful. Like,
I think like nobody pulls off like the bitchy look better than Kathy, and it's sexy. People are drawn to it. They love it. It is so funny to watch. It's not funny, but it is. It's like you've got this vibe.
She does.
But it is so enticing to people, and it's fun to watch other people because they just watch you. And they have this. She's got this thing.
That's my bartending.
You've got,
but
you just got a vibe.
You do, because even funny. All the guys in school, we were just talking about this. Mike and I were joking, and we were talking to a bunch of guys, and they were like, "You had the hot mom, like you were the hot mom of the high school."
But they all knew not to mess with Allie though. At the same time.
Well, no, I was the little geek following behind her in my Pooh overalls, like that. People laugh at me like you wear Pooh Bear overalls till like 8th grade.
Yes. I know, but I kind of did that to you.
I know.
Like the minute she was born, she was in overalls. I wore overalls. Like I still wear overalls. It's like that's my most favorite creation.
I had every color: pinstripe,
black, blue, anything. Any picture you see Allie in, she's in overalls and a hat.
Yes.
Yes. No, I think that my attitude comes from being 5'3" and a bartender, and back then was like 105 pounds. So you better be a tough ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it wasn't what I was working at Applebee's. I mean, I was working in some, music and biker bars and things, and you kind of have to puff your chest up.
Yeah.
Not that mine needs to be puffed up anymore, but and prove yourself. Like, don't mess with me.
Yeah.
Do not mess with
I get
me.
it.
Yeah.
So that was
I'm
my
a 5'3"
motto.
bartender over here.
I mean, I've had some pretty ugly things happen to me as a bartender.
There's some pretty crazy stuff that you deal with.
Very crazy.
It
and
is.
so you have to kind of put that on. So yeah, Dave thought I was from New York because of my aggressiveness and attitude. I mean, I'm definitely not your typical Minnesotan. I don't think. And I'm sure that comes from being raised by people from Outies. Mm-hmm. And now my husband's from Outies. So so yeah.
And you guys put those values into us,
Very
feel
big,
like.
I think. We're not... I don't think that we lied to you. I think we've been pretty open and honest about how tough life is and the right way and the wrong way to do things.
For sure.
And I think that, Dave had a really tough life growing up also, and he's always shared that with the girls about how lucky you are to have two parents that support and love you and that are here to guide you and give you help when you need it. Whereas he was pretty much thrown out, you know what I mean, by the time he was 14, you know, kind of thing. So I think that really helped my girls. Dave's probably one of the most intelligent men I know besides my father. And to listen to his stories and to listen to the way that he looks at life is very interesting. It really opened my eyes to not be the baby and the little spoiled rotten. He always calls me Lily White Tree Hugger. You know what I mean? Because he just had such a rough life, and I'm complaining, and he's like, whatever. Like, your parents buy you a car and your brother.
And not just a car. What kind of car?
Trailer.
Yeah. What about that?
I said, you even got that?
So, you know what I mean? So Dave calls me those things, whereas he had a pretty, he had to really...
Well, he just... And came out of that so just still loving. Like, from the minute I met Dave, it never felt like I was his stepdaughter. No. Like, just the love that he had for you poured into me.
And I've never been loved by a man like I've been loved by Dave here.
Yeah.
Like, that man has my back. I mean, that man thinks of me as, you know what I mean? She's my gal and don't mess with her.
Wow.
And another...
He worked hard to get you.
He did work hard to get me, but he's another man to me, how you were saying that your husband has never been a womanizer or, glance over or checking. That Dave was like that too. He was raised by women. We have 3 daughters. Yeah. He's very respectful to women. He doesn't talk nasty about women, even when he's with the boys. You know what I mean? You just never hear that out of Dave's voice. And I think for a man to represent that in front of women is probably the most powerful gift for a woman.
Yeah.
You know, so that taught me some stuff too. Yeah. So he's been my rock. Dave's helped me through a lot of things with my family. I've helped him through a lot of things with his family. We've supported. Has it been easy? No. Is marriage easy? No. But the way he accepted my daughter and the way I accepted his daughter, I wouldn't change anything. I mean, I don't call Jillian my stepdaughter, and people get offended sometimes when I don't say that she's my stepdaughter. When they find out, like, well, she's your stepdaughter. You've only had the two. And I'm like, well, yeah, but she's still my kid. Yeah. I've known her since she was 4.5, 5 years old. She's my kid, you know? I don't think of that's not disrespectful to Jill's mother whatsoever. I tell people the whole story, but she's my kid.
And that's how we grew up. She's my sister. Yeah. We're not blood, but she's my sister.
But we're family, and that's what we do. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I begged Dave for 5 years. After we got married in 2000, and I begged him for 5 years to have a child. I'm like, I only got to have one child, and now Jill and Allie, you know, I got the blessing of having Jillian, and Jillian was living with us at that point. But they're not fun anymore. You know what I mean?
Allie won't wear overalls anymore.
No, I can't dress them. They have their own minds. They don't want to go to the pumpkin patch anymore. They don't want to do things. They won't dress up for Halloween hardly. Like, it was whatever. And he kept saying, why, Kathy? They're almost grown. We're almost done. Why do you? And I'm like, please, please, please. And he finally said yes. And with 2 weeks, I was pregnant with Isabella. Aww. And we had our little Izzy May. Mm-hmm. And so then she was like, what filled our circle? I said our circle has got a little bit left to connect. And Izzy May was the connection.
Yes, I remember her waking me up like in the middle of the night with the pregnancy test. Like, you took it right away. Like, I'm pregnant. I was like, I get a sister.
And we were going on vacation like the next day. Do you remember that? And we went to an amusement park. And so I always tell Isabella, like, right when we found out you were in my belly, you were on like the Spider-Man ride and this ride and all over. Yeah. We went to Six Flags.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And that's where she can relate to your Minnesota trips, because we made a lot of trips to Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah. Twice a year, and we would drive. And I'm like, why do we have to drive? And then we have to drive straight through. That's 14 hours. And half the time I would bartend till 2 in the morning, and then we would leave. And I would do a lot of the driving.
Yeah, that's his one fault. Boats and cars.
Yeah, he would. He's like, he can drive and he would fall asleep.
Kevin would never let me drive. But I'd be like sweating and crying because he's like, 85 miles an hour, and I'm like, God, we're going to die.
And maybe that's why Dave let me drive most of the time, just because he didn't want to listen to me. Yeah. Honestly.
Kevin should have learned that lesson. Yeah. Well, now it is. We go somewhere. He goes, oh, you're driving? I go, oh, yeah, I'm driving.
That's how Dave and I do that.
It's a lot less stressful when I drive.
It is.
Except for him. But then I love it. I love him over there,
Does he get nervous when you're
He
driving?
does. He'll go, are you going to stop? I'm like, of course I'm going to stop. I do that. I answer him the same way he answers me when I ask him stupid questions.
Dave keeps his mouth shut for the most part, but then he will say, like, oh, if I would have done that and I was driving, I always go, whatever.
We've just decided it's a control thing, both of us. So.
Sure. And it probably is.
It is.
It is. Dave and I are both pretty controlling. We're very stubborn. Yeah. We're a lot alike.
You are.
A lot. Mm-hmm. But, he's the love of my life. I would say he's, Steve Benson, my high school sweetheart, was my first love. But I would say Dave's my first real love. Yeah. We rode Harleys together our whole life. We had everything in common. We were a partnership, and that's a very secure feeling.
Die.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's a secure feeling to have. So
I remember when I met Dave for the first time, and I was like a daughter to him immediately. Yeah. And usually your friends' dads kind of don't even remember your names half the time. I think about it. But Dave, he's just, I don't know. He reminds me. He has a lot of qualities of my biological dad, Mark, and he has a lot of qualities of Kevin. So he actually reminds me a lot of just both. But I talk to him very much like I talk to my dad a lot.
Sure.
Or I would say Mark, my dad. But it is I love the relationship I have with him, and it is. It's such a. I could tell him that I killed somebody last night, and he would help me bury the body. And he wouldn't ask a question. And he would. I mean, and if I was like, Dave, go buy me tampons. I need tampons. He would be like, okay, what kind, you know? And he would be like super regular, or like he's so incredible. He is. And he's just.
We were just crying about it in Florida.
We were. And I was just like, he is. And I think sometimes when you're surrounded by these amazing people, you forget how to have gratitude, and that it's not a normal thing, and it's not everywhere, and it's not common. And when you sit back and you appreciate it and you realize like how blessed you really are, it kind of hits you sometimes. I think we had that moment where although our dads had a different journey, we had two men, and I have goosebumps, step up to the plate and take us on, and they weren't scared, and they did it.
It wasn't easy.
And it wasn't easy, but they're still doing it, and they've put roofs, you know, and they
didn't give up.
They didn't give up. Yeah. They did not abandon us. And, and for somebody to choose that, not because it's blood, not because it's family, and that's what you do, because they just truly, actually, genuinely love you, and that is incredible. And I look at that, and I hope one day that is what I get to receive for my daughter. And Hayden has had an incredible father growing up, but you know, I hope that I get to have somebody like that for her, and not just in that relationship, but I think you just, as like I date, or as you go into life, and you realize like there's just not a lot of people like that.
No,
and it's very few and far in between, but they both went through a lot of life to get to be the men that they are. And that's not easy either. And, you know, they had to accept and overcome. Well, not just accept what had happened and the choice that they had made. And there are always two people who are always moving forward. They don't stay stagnant, you know, and I'm really grateful for Kevin, because I have a lot of his qualities. My work ethic, the way my mind works is very similar. It didn't work that way. I did not operate that way, but because he forced me to go out of my comfort zone in areas and to be a problem solver. And it was, if something was wrong with my car, I had to go out with him and hold the flashlight and do the things, but I had to learn. And I'm grateful. I know how to change a tire. I can check my oil. I can replace my headlight. I can do all the things, because that is, but if it was ever anything, who was there, it was him. Like, he was there every single time. And there's just not many people like that.
And I have to say the same about Dave. He might have not done that stuff, but my brain training of, we're sitting down and we're going to do your homework. And we're like, he made me who I am today. I say I got like my calm, no offense, Mom, you already said you had a temper. But like I said, I got my calm from my dad, but that's not true. I actually got my calm under pressure from Dave, I feel like, because he taught me. It's like, oh, you missed your flight? Okay. Like, all right, cool.
It's going to be okay, whereas I'm spinning out of control.
Yeah, and I think it's funny how different they are, too, because, like, Kevin he's very, like, secure, and he has, you know, those things, but he wasn't the most affectionate, where Dave is a very affectionate dad, and he's very girl dad oriented in that
totally
way.
Is.
You know, so it is kind of funny, those different qualities.
Because when you raise girls, ladies, and this is for you, your daughters hug you and kiss you, and you hug and kiss them, and then they get to a certain age, and they don't want you to touch them. And it's hard as a mom. You're like, whereas Dave just goes in, he's like, I don't care. Does. He just goes and grabs you and kisses you. Yeah. So now I'm trying to do that. I didn't do that with Jill and Al as much. I gave them like, well, they need their space. They don't want me to touch them. They're being whatever. Now with Isabella,
Sandy gave me the best advice. Your best friend, Sandy. And I remember talking to her. So how many kids do they have?
4.
And I remember talking to her as Hayden was growing into a teenager. And just saying, what advice do you have going into this season of life? And she goes, you know, one of the things I wish I would have done was not respected the space as much. Yes. Because, and I'm like that. I did the same thing with Hayden. I was like, oh, you want your space? I'll give it to you, because, you know, no, you don't want to force that. And she goes, I wish that, even though she wanted that, she goes, do the arm touches, rub his back, do those things, pull them in, even when they push away, because they're not going to be mad that you did that. And I remember just really hearing that. I don't know if it was the way she delivered it or how it was, but I do like, it's those things where when we're in the car, I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta like rub his back, or not that I got to, but I think you just get so used to
it's personal touch.
Yes, and not giving them that and having that space, and like he lays in my bed with next to me and Lorelai, and I want to like hang out with them, but if you move too quickly, they're gone. And so it's like I don't want to be seen, and I want to hang out with you, but I don't want you to fly either. Like,
but they do appreciate, because I definitely appreciate when Dave would just barge in, like, oh great, okay, what do you want? And then he would just sit there and he'd rub my feet, like, oh, did you have a nice time at dance tonight? Like, to just nonchalantly, where it's like I have to like force myself to do that with my kids because I just am not that person.
Oh, I know. So I have to grab her boys, like, get over here and hug me. And I feel bad, like it's the typical, give Nana a hug. And they're like, oh, God. Not that we don't have a fun relationship, but they're just like, all right.
That's just how they are. I know I grab on, like when Hunter comes in or Hayden, I just hold on. They're like, okay. All right. I'm like, no, some more.
Yeah. Because then there are those split seconds where they come in and they're giving you a hug and you're like,
Yes.
But like, I think I even said to you, Mom, I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know why I can't, I don't know why I personally can't accept the touch, that type of touch anymore. And I think maybe more I'm realizing it now as to like where it was coming from or why, or you put those walls up.
I feel like you are a
hugger. I am a hugger, but when it comes to my mom, it's weird. It's not weird, but I'm not as receiving of it at times. Yeah. I'm better at it now.
She's not a receiver of hugs very well either.
No. She does it all the time. She tries to just hold on. I'm like, get off of me. I love you, but don't hug me.
Yeah. Like dolphin flips in front of me.
I just want to say, I almost got my butt kicked in Florida. And she was not going to be my wing girl. She had the video camera out.
I go, Allie, you're going to get your ass kicked. And I pull my phone out. Found out the lady was really just complimenting her butt.
Oh, wow. How are you going to get in a fight?
In a very aggressive way. She was like, stand up right now. And Allie's like, okay. And I'm like, Allie's going to get her butt kicked.
And I'm in my head going, am I going for the eyes or the kitty? The eyes or the kitty?
It was pretty funny.
It was.
Well, that reminds me of the story in California. Why don't you tell that, Allie?
When I ran away from my mother.
When you ran away.
Everybody knows I'm a flighter. I am a flighter. We were walking down Sunset Boulevard. And there was this homeless man on some form of drugs. Don't know what that was.
We were going to In-N-Out Burger. And we saw him when we were pulling up. And I'm like, that man is out of control. Just ignore, walk when we get out of this car. We got out of the car.
She ran?
He was a magnet to us. I'm like, just walk. Yes. Walk, Allie, walk. And so she's like, oh my God. I'm like, just walk. And we walked to the In-N-Out. We got in there, and the line was, 1,000 people. So we're like, we're not going. Of course, he's lingering in the front. We come out, and he's already talking to somebody else. I'm like, we're going to be fine. No. He starts screaming at us. We start running. I'm in, like, wedges with, like, some strap that they're macrame. So my feet are falling out, but I'd have to unbuckle it. She just takes off. And I'm like, and my feet are like, I can't run.
I gotta outrun the bear.
Like, God. I'm going to get stabbed. Your mother is going to get stabbed, and she's already in the car.
In my mind, I was unlocking the car and starting it so we could get into the car faster.
So I'm glad you did that to her. So that was a little tough love there, Al. I wanted to stage something when I'm with her next time just to run from her and let her know what it feels like.